Jazzcast Pros.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Getting Real with Bossy. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
How are you today?
Good. I'm feeling good.
Me too.
I'm feeling nostalgic. I'm very excited.
I am. I'm gonna try not to cry today. I can't tell you how many memories I have of going to this place. I went with my whole family, but primarily with my dad. I think he and I really got it the most. I don't know. Those are the memories that stick out in my head. Looking through pictures for the Genesee Country Village and Museum, which is our focus for today, has really got me in all the feels.
Well, and I never realized Becky Wehle's connection. I was actually thinking about it earlier today on just an offshoot about the word Genesee, and like, oh, I wonder. No, there's no relevance there, and it turns out there is definitely a connection to the word Genesee in the museum. I had no idea where it came from because it's just always been something that's been there.
Right.
I know you're a big fan. I'm a big fan. I love every part of it, from getting lost in how buildings were made with my husband to the kids getting excited about, the old toys, or the way things are being milked, or they're cooking an animal, or they're dyeing their own yarn. There's so many different things going on. And then the hands-on activities and just the simplicity of it. So I loved that Becky was willing to come on and talk to us about it.
Me too.
We've never had a chair on or a museum on, and this was fascinating. And I think it's important to see that, again, we are facing the same struggles in every business, no matter what your business is.
Absolutely. And how something so old and historic is staying relevant in today's world and still growing, even though their physical space really can't grow anymore. What are they doing to stay relevant? I think is so fascinating.
And I think it's important for us all to learn from that. If the Genesee Country Village and Museum can stay relevant in their current infrastructure without adding, we always want to add. And
right.
They can just add stories, and they can add information, and you don't have to add space.
I love that, adding stories.
Well, you do the same thing over in your business.
I love it. And we learn things new every time. We had a paranormal investigation this weekend, and one of the guys came in and he had stories going back from even before it was Haley's, which was the 1960s. So I was like, give me it. I'm like, I'm a sponge. Give it to me. So
I will be watching for the posts.
There will be one, don't worry. So just love it. I love everything about it. All right. Well, hope you enjoy our interview with Becky Wehle, the president and CEO of the Genesee Country Village and Museum.
Hi, I'm Kelly.
And I'm Kelly,
the host of Getting Real with Bossy, the real, raw, and honest podcast about small business ownership. With our experience, 9 businesses in over 25 years, we continue to bear it all and share what we wish we had known.
We move past the must be nices and start getting real. Come along as we interview small business owners and get the true story.
Leave with another tool for the next time you feel alone on this journey.
We are so excited for our guest today. Becky Wehle is the president and CEO of one of my favorite places. And I feel like I can't imagine anybody having anything negative to say about what you do, because it's just every childhood memory, so many childhood memories, so many childhood photos are involved with your business. And I'm just so excited to have you here. I might fangirl a little bit, so I apologize. I was digging through photographs today and I was like, do I even bring them? No, I'll use them for show notes, but excellent. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are here with the president and CEO of the Genesee Country Village and Museum. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. And that's the sweetest introduction. Like, that's what makes, because there are people who say, things about what we do that are not that complimentary. So
I can't even imagine.
I can.
It happens.
Have they never been? I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm happy to tell you more about that, amongst other things.
I think, yeah, we'll probably get to that for sure. Oh gosh. Well, we're so glad to have you here today. And I want to say, when I was doing some research, so your last name seemed familiar to me, and I was doing a little bit of research, and I'm guessing, was Lewis your great your great grandfather?
Yes, my great
Great-grandfather?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know the name Louis Wehle from the Genesee Brewing Company. We do a lot of work with them and we've done a lot of tours for our staff. So that name has come up a lot. And as I was doing research, I was like, oh no shit. Oh my God, this is even more amazing now. I'm even more of a fangirl. So that's incredible. So
Wait a second. So I'm a fangirl. I haven't even gotten into my fangirling yet. Mine are not from childhood memories, but adult memories with my kids. But I'm also a fangirl for the Genesee Brewery. So now I don't even know what to do. So I was unaware. So Becky, why don't you start by telling us your story? Like, give us a little background on Becky, who you are, what you've done, and how you became the president and CEO of the Genesee Country Village and Museum.
So yes, you have hit on some of it in that I have a very long family history in Rochester as a whole and as it connects to Genesee Country Village and Museum. So I grew up in Rochester. I was born in Scottsville and lived there, which kind of, ties into the museum story in that my family lived there. My great-grandparents, Louis Wehle, lived across the street, and he bought the Genesee Brewing Company shortly before Prohibition ended. So 1932, we joke that, we're not going to ask a lot of questions about how he knew it was a good idea to buy a brewery right before Prohibition was allegedly going to end. He probably got tipped off to something, but it was the start of the family business. And he worked there. Then my grandfather, Jack Wehle, worked there, and my father worked there as well. And we sold it as a family in 2000. But then my grandfather, Jack, was driving from Scottsville to the brewery downtown, and in the 60s was seeing lots of buildings that were kind of falling down and in need of preservation. He'd been to places like Sturbridge and Williamsburg, and so he started the museum, started moving buildings there, and then it was part of my life. So it was in the family before I was, and I grew up going there and was on the board. And then about 8 years ago, when the past president and CEO decided that he was going to leave, I said, okay, I'll step up. I'll come in and at least be the interim CEO. We'll see how it goes. And 8 years later, I'm still here. So the kind of my professional background is that I actually worked at, right after I graduated from college, I worked at George Eastman Museum. And then I went over to the University of Rochester, and I worked there for about 18 years doing various things in advancement. So alumni relations, parent relations. I planned a lot of events and oversaw a donor relations and stewardship group that worked on the campaign there. So I had a fundraising background. I had a museum background. I obviously have a very strong family connection to the museum. And so all of that came together to get me this position. And 8 years in, it's a lot, but I'm still doing it every day.
Still the interim president.
Yeah, no longer interim. Yeah.
Right.
I had no idea. So I was going into this like, oh, how does one become part of the board of directors on a historical museum? And to think like you grew up there, like you were saying, like you went there with your family and your family actually started the museum. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Did you think like as a little girl, were you like, yeah, I'm going to run this someday?
I was actually more fixated on running the brewery. I'm not really sure why, but that was just the thing that I was like, no, that's what I'm going to do. And then when we wound up selling it, I was like, okay, well, I'm not doing that. Now I can move over. And yes, I'm much better at running the museum, I think, than I would be running a brewery, because that's a hard business to be in too. But, it's still here too. It's not quite in the same form that it was, being family owned when we had it, but it's still, it's a pretty remarkable business to still be going in this day and age as well.
So this is you're the third largest in the country of living history museums, the largest in New York State, correct?
Yep.
I'm just going to start with like my experience. So we used to go there several times a year as a child. We went on school trips, and I made the tin signs that we hammered with nails and made some cheese, I think, on one visit. And every time we went, we would have like a little picnic at the gazebo. And I have so many pictures of so many different years with me and my dad just like running around the gazebo and having the most fun. Mm-hmm. And then I went another time as an adult for one of the baseball games it had to be fall because we found this one like farm stand on the way there and we got all these amazing gourds. But I just remember like baseball, I had no idea this was even part of this. And then I'd never went again. And then my friend and I went this Christmas. So I hadn't been back yet. And we went it was like Yuletide in the country. And I was just blown away. And I was blown away because I was like, I love living history museums. We went to the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown several times growing up as well. I'm just a big nerd for history. I'm a big lover of old buildings. We've purchased old buildings. We try to respect them and keep them going and not change too much.
Yep.
So it's always been incredibly important to me. But as an adult, I was like, is this still relevant? Like, are we, because, history is not always great. There are some things in our history that just are not wonderful. And I know it's early on in the conversation, but I think it's so important to talk about so early on. You've got a really strong DEAI statement, but you live it because we went to this thing at Christmas time and I was like, is this still relevant? I want to be here. It's Christmas time. It's gorgeous. I've got wonderful memories. And one of the events was one of the houses we went into was talking about a Black barber and his time and what was going on in the city in his profession with race in general at that time. And my friend and I walked out and we were like, well, I'm impressed. Like I was a little nervous. I was like, how is this going to be handled? But you guys are doing so many things to really tackle the important history of Rochester. You've got drag. You've got events about drag. You have events about men in photography. And is that you? Like, how did this even happen? I was so floored to see how far things had come. And so happy.
Well, that's great because this is why there are people who don't like us. I think they are often people who don't really know us very well, but there's some who know us and who are saying, we're too woke. We've kind of, we're telling telling stories that are not related to our mission. And what the story you just told is actually what we are doing. Like what I say, if someone says that to me is, we are not talking about anything that did not happen in 19th century Western New York. You might not know about it. You might not have learned about it in school, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And so that's what we're trying to do is share some stories about things that might be new and different. And I think that's why, when you were younger, you came, I'm guessing, because you wanted to learn something new. You wanted to find out, how did people live in the 19th century? And so we may be adding to that. And we're also very clear. We're not taking stories away. We're not taking something that you may remember from a visit earlier away. We're telling more stories. And so, and it's not me. We have, I am obviously part of the work that's done, but we have people who are doing research and trying to understand the drag, for example, that, who were some of the people who did drag in the 19th century in this area. And we, have partnered with the Museum and Science Center. They have some information, some newspaper clips about folks. And so sharing that, sharing how we found this information and then taking it and, connecting it in that case to modern drag and a fun night where you can come and learn a little bit, but have some drinks and some snacks and be outside in our, lovely Pavilion Garden restaurant. Like that is how we're trying to stay relevant. And it's, some days it's easier than others, but that's the work that we're doing.
I do know that the RMSC has a whole program that they've initiated. I mean, it's been some time now, time moves weird with the pandemic, on increasing like the awareness of different cultures in the area and different histories. And I know they had done, that huge thing with the carousel, maybe 6 months ago, maybe 10 years ago. My timeline is,
I think it was somewhere in between there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you work with other local institutions like them often to kind of share information and increase your reach?
We do. RMSC has in the sense of like, where can we find information and actually use it to develop programs? They probably have the best connection to us because they do have some of those archival materials that are useful. But then, we all the cultural organizations are working together mostly just to support each other, because it is hard work. And, we've all gotten some flack from people who don't believe that Pride Month is something that should be recognized, or, whatever the issue is. And so if we can kind of say like, nope, this is what organizations should do. This is how we should be sharing this information and kind of helping people. We're educational institutions. Like, that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're not just a place where you go and, the people who say, well, I just want to go to Genesee Country Museum and have a peaceful time and not think about things like LGBTQ identity. And you're like, okay, but if you think that's a 21st or 20th or 21st century invention, and I'm just, air quoting with that, like, okay, you really don't understand history if that's what you think. But, we'll try to help. Like, I didn't realize the history of drag. And so, that kind of thing, like maybe if we can just try to help people to know a little bit more about the history, they might be a little more accepting of some of the work that's going on.
Well, I wanted to get that piece out because not everybody listens to a full episode. So I was like, I think this is incredibly important. So I want to make sure that it's in there for sure.
Thank you.
So I am also a fangirl. We did not go as kids. My family didn't really have money. And so my dad was always working. And if we went anywhere, it was camping. So as a parent, I've always tried to like take my kids and expose them to more things and be a bigger part of the community, just because we can. Right. Mm-hmm. So my kids love the Olden Place Museum. And now that today's school ends today. Mm-hmm. So when I leave this podcast, I go pick them up from school. And I would say probably by tomorrow, they will start asking the questions of things we're doing this summer that we do every year. And we always try to pick a really good, fun event to go to at the Genesee Country Village and Museum. So they'll ask me, when are we going to Seabreeze? When are we going to the Olden Place Museum? When are we going to the Renaissance Fair? Like they have this like list of things that they want to go do. And I'm always surprised a little bit that they still want to go. So like, this is even my 14-year-old and my 12-year-old. Okay. So they've been going. The little kids, they think everything's fantastic still. So they don't remember going last year. They're 6 and 8. Like they barely remember the place. But I'm always a little bit surprised that the older kids still want to go. And it makes me like, just a little bit happy inside every time they ask. So I'm like, yeah, we're going to make, and then we look at the schedule and we try to pick a good weekend to go.
I feel like it's got a little bit of everything though. Well, you're learning, mm-hmm. which I think intrinsically kids want to do on some level. It's theatrical. Sometimes mm-hmm. it's silly, and there's a lot of stuff that's hands on. And I think all of that means like, that's a kid's dream, whether they want to admit it. I'm glad your kids are still admitting it, but I think it so speaks to what kids are looking for and have always looked for.
Yeah. And I would say that's, what I say about bringing kids to visit. Like I was having a conversation with someone over the weekend who had a 2-year-old. And I was like, you know what, at that age, just get them out there and let them run wild. And, even if that's all they do, if they go and see the sheep or they see the oxen and have lunch and just run around and burn off some energy, like that's great for that age. And then as they get older, they find what they might be interested in. But, we have so much. So, teenagers who might be interested in something more hands-on, like blacksmithing or tinsmithing, they can learn about that. Or they might, over at our nature center, they can go over there and hike and that kind of thing. So we have 8 weeks of summer camp that we have kids. I think the oldest kid who enrolls in camp is 15. And then after that, they become like volunteer counselors. And so we have a lot of kids who've kind of grown up. They come to camp, then they become counselors, and then they even come and work for us. Like we have a fair number of year-round staff who used to be camp kids. So there's really, there's a chance for everybody to find something that they love. Maybe it's just even, snacks in our confectionery, baked goods, and ice cream.
The giant hill that you can roll down
Yep.
by the gazebo.
Yep.
The little kids just want to go roll down the hill. It's like the most perfect
It really
hill
is.
in Rochester.
And the thing that's fascinating about that is it's like there is some sort of little kid just instinct for that, because every year there are kids rolling down that. I'm like, this has been for almost 50 years that somebody's been rolling down that hill, and they just, have at it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So you've listed some of them. There are so many things going on at the museum. You have a brewery on site, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You have a potter on site. I'm just trying to do it from memory from last year, because it was recent that I started looking at the museum from a business sense. Of like walking around, and I'm like, so how does this work? Like, you have a brewery and you have a potter and you have these animals to take care of, and
so there are different answers to all of those things. So we have about 60 year-round staff, and then we bring on about 100 or so seasonal staff every year, mostly who are the costumed interpreters in the village and folks like that. So like the brewery, as an example, we actually have a partnership with Rohrbox. So we have 2 beers that are based on 19th century recipes that we sell. And people always say, well, do you sell what you made in the brewery? And I was like, no, there are chipmunks that live in the vats and things there. So no, I'm not selling that. Rohrbox makes it in their nice, clean brewery, and then cans it and then gives it to us. But we show people, how you would have made beer in the 19th century. And it was actually it was a pretty popular drink because you couldn't drink the water. So once you process the beer and turn it into that, it was pasteurized. And so you would be able to drink that. Even like younger people would drink it, where maybe they wouldn't have been drinking quite as much water. So, but then the pottery is an example of what we've really turned into a production sort of facility. And actually we have a salt glaze kiln that we fire a couple times a year. So we have 2 potters, and we have a new one who just came on this year, and they work all year long. And so they produce pottery, we fire it, and then we sell it in our store. And it's a great chance for people to take it home. And the salt glaze is really unique. So we get people who buy it even online from like all throughout the country, because they really want that special look to it. So there's kind of, there are different things. Then we have more like the tinsmith, the blacksmith, cooper. What else do we have? We have dressmaker, printer. Those are more just demonstrating. We might sell a few small things that one of them makes, but it's not the kind of level of production that both the brewery and the pottery generate.
So are those all employees?
Yep.
How the heck do you employ like the skill set that's necessary to do those things?
Yeah. So there are a couple answers to how the heck do we do this. In the spirit of small business, like today is a day we run payroll, and we have a lot of people. Our payroll is pretty high this time of year, and it's sometimes an adventure to say like, okay, how have the last couple weeks been admission wise? And, we always make it, but it might take a little finagling of cash sometimes, even for an organization like us. Like we have a $5 million budget, and it still can be hard.
Well, that's reassuring a little bit.
Yeah.
I do magic every Tuesday. Like, interesting. How am I going to do this?
You're like, oh, sales were not that high last week, but everybody still worked.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Like we had our, this past weekend, we had our Celtic fair, and it was hotter than hell on Saturday, even though, it was hotter last week, but for some reason, Saturday just felt gross.
Yes.
And then it rained yesterday. And so, our revenue for the weekend is off about probably between $8,000 and $10,000 for what we had budgeted. And it's like, okay, well, we got to just keep moving and, kind of make up for that in other ways. So yes, it is a bit of an adventure to kind of make a nonprofit that is this staff heavy work every day. But, the other part of your comment around literally like people who know how to blacksmith, tinsmith, whatever, that's hard too, because you can't just shove someone in there with the, all the, sharp tools and things like that and have them be convincing as a, someone who's educating the public. So we've tried to kind of, as we say, build the core of people who can move into those jobs, but it's not easy. The good thing is there are now younger people. So when you talk, Kelly, about your kids wanting to come, like maybe one of them thinks like, hey, I could do this as even just a hobby and come and do it at the museum. Like that's what we're trying to kind of get that spirit of the younger generation who are interested in all these 19th century things like cheese making, making your own clothes, brewing your own beer. Like, how can we tap into that spirit that's, kind of having a regeneration and figure out how to get some staff who might want to learn how to do all these things. But yeah, it's, and we're not alone in that, like with other living history museums and trying to figure out, okay, how do we replace the aging generation of craftspeople?
It's fascinating. There's so many levels. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking now, like the women, they're cooking in the kitchen. Like you said, it's hotter than everything out there. There's no AC in these houses. And it's one of my favorite parts personally is when they're cooking in the kitchen with like the stuff that's grown outside. Mm-hmm. It like inspires me to go take care of my garden a little bit better. Because for me, like that's one of my favorite things to do is to be able to take anything from my garden and feed it to my family. Like it makes me feel like I'm a part of the universe instead of just like running with my head cut off, which is how I normally feel. But I get to pick and choose when that oven gets turned on. I don't really have AC in my kitchen either, but that's when I order a pizza. So like, are there days that you just shut down? Like you're not cooking today? Like we're not running the fires?
Yeah, we did actually last week. So anytime it's, over, I think we say 85, we just don't make the cooks. So we shut down the kitchens, the blacksmith shop, which has like the huge coal-fired forge in it. And we even get to the point of saying, the interpreters cannot wear their costumes if they want to wear their modern clothing that doesn't involve like a corset or wool or something like that. They can totally do that. But yeah, I mean, that's part of what we hope people realize is like, yeah, we complain about it being hot, but like in the 19th century, like, yep, you still had to eat. And the way you did that was by building a fire and cooking something. And so you didn't have much choice then. So change is good. Sometimes people need to think like when they want a simpler time, it's like, yep, that really, you might want to think that there's some things that happen today that are worthwhile.
It's worth the change for sure.
Yeah. Progress.
So you have is it 68 structures on the property? Yep. That is true. Yep. Okay. When was the last one brought in?
2004 was the last one that came in. So we started in 1966 and probably like 2/3 of them were in by the mid 80s. And then it kind of slowed down after that. But the last one we brought in was a tailor shop that came from about like 5 miles down between Mumford and Scottsville. And every week we get someone who writes to us. I got a sweet little handwritten note from someone in Lyons who said, I've seen this, I think it was a mill, and, I hope you will save it. And I was like, I appreciate you reaching out, but I have my hands full with the 68 buildings that we have.
Is there a process? Like if there is a building you guys wanted to take on, or is it like you have to plan 10 years in advance to take on another building?
Since it's been 20 years since we've taken a new one, I think, I don't even know what the process would be. There might be some building that we would add as it relates to telling new stories. If we found one that we knew was on the Underground Railroad or something like that, we might do that. But it's just such a different time in terms of moving buildings and like the permits that you'd have to go through and the bridges and all, to fit everything under it. Like, I think there were a lot of times, in the 60s when they just picked up a building and moved it and like didn't didn't ask for permission, didn't, talk to the building inspector or anything like that. They were just like, okay, we're going to move this. And they were all very rural, so no one maybe noticed that much. But yeah, I think the chances of us ever adding another building are pretty slim, but you never know. You never know.
Well, if you decide to, my building possibly was part of the Underground Railroad and has a lot of other really cool history involved. So you just let me know, but it's enormous. So I don't even know. Yeah. I don't even know what the process, I don't even understand. I mean, I follow like these fabricated homes on the highway. I'm like, how did that even happen? So I don't even know what the process is to even get a building moved, but I think mine would be too big for sure.
Probably. We'd have to take it apart and then put it back together. And that's a lot of work too.
Yeah.
And is that like an activity that would be grant funded or?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, certainly I think, if you were preserving, just continuing with the Underground Railroad, if you were preserving a building that had historic significance, there probably is, state or federal money to be able to do that. But there's also kind of, I think in that case, probably a hope that you'd keep it where it was. Like right. if you're talking about that kind of story, that you tell it in the place that building was originally, as opposed to moving it.
Right.
Right. So I have to assume that during COVID, I mean, COVID sucked, right? Like everything got shut down, but with you being an outdoor facility, that people may not have had as much access to, just because our lives are busy and every weekend gets taken up by something. Mm-hmm. I have to assume you guys had a reasonable COVID-ish response of people being like, I think we definitely came out more a couple times a year during COVID, just because we were like, oh, let's go back. It's something to do with the family. We can be outside. I know personally in the work that Kelly and I do and the different businesses we talk to, it's really hard right now. I personally believe that we all got kind of this influx of aid and money and time, and we got to put that aid, money, and time into the community and into our families, and it was amazing. But now that money has run out, and now everything costs so much more to do, and it costs so much more to pay our employees, and the products cost more, so everything's going up in price. I just bought stamps today. Don't get me started. So I'm making an assumption here, and tell me if I'm blatantly wrong, that it's hard to be in business right now and to get people to come.
I mean, yes, absolutely. When I say about payroll, it's like, yep, that was it. Like, we got PPP loans that helped us through. So on some level, I think for a lot of organizations, well, the pandemic, it was awful. But from a cash, kind of business point of view, it was like, oh, okay. We do have some support that's helping us. And you're right. We were lucky, like compared to someplace like Jiva or the RPO that couldn't come back. We started up again like late June of 2020. And we literally had people like banging at the door, like, can't we come just walk? Because everybody was sick of walking around their neighborhoods, wanted to just go somewhere. And we started with, you can't even go in buildings. And so we did that. And we had folks who came and who said, yeah, I just want to get out. And I just want to, I know this is like you guys kind of, it's their happy place too. And they said, we just want to be able to come and walk around. And so that was important. And we saw, our general attendance bounced back pretty well. What we really struggled with was school field trips. So of our, pre-pandemic, we were at about 98,000 people a year, and about 20,000 of those were kids on field trips. And that just didn't come until, knock on wood, so far this year, we've been back to 2019 field trip numbers. But, those are a lot of the kids. We are just finishing our field trip season too, because school is now over. But we were seeing like 700 and 800 and 900 kids a day who come, school buses roll up, everybody comes off, chaperones come. And so that was a huge hit for us.
That's a lot of school. I did not think that many schools went, because I didn't ever go with my school. So like Kelly said, she did.
Yeah.
So like, I didn't even know that was an option. I was like, wait, your school took you out.
Yep. Yeah. Fourth grade field trips.
Yep. Yep. Mrs. Clem. I remember very, very well.
So yes. So it's like, we had that. And I think there was also people were traveling less, even into like 2021 and a little bit into 2022. So it cut down on our tourist business, but it also meant local people weren't going other places. They weren't flying to Europe. So they were maybe more likely to come visit us. But all the things you just said, paying staff more, paying more for buses and fuel oil and, everything we buy, all the food that we buy. And then just, people trying to understand what people want now and what are they willing to pay for? Because now it feels like consumers are starting to have that feeling a little bit of like, maybe I'm not willing to pay for something that I might have been willing to a couple of years ago. It might be a different price point for them, and trying to figure that out. Like, what do people want? It's not easy.
So I believe RMSE, Strong Museum, and I don't know if it's you guys as well. If you get SNAP benefits, do you guys do a program like that?
We do. There's a program called Museums for All that we all participate in. We do it in kind of different ways, but for us, it's if you have SNAP or EBT benefits, it's $3 for each family member to come. And that's no matter what so we have a higher special event rate. So basically, you could bring your family for $3 a person to come if you have those benefits. And we've been doing it. This is our second year, so we're about halfway through this year. And we see a fair number of folks who come and take advantage of that program because there's a lot of poverty in rural areas also. So we're, somebody who might not be able to get down to Strong Museum easily, but can come to us and have that benefit.
I love that so much. I know so many kids, even the zoo, they're like, I've never been to the zoo. I'm like, how have you never been?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's right there.
Yeah. We try to do free days sort of interspersed throughout the year. So in August, we do kids free. So kids 12 and under are free every Thursday in August. So we see, parents who gather up like every kid in the neighborhood, sometimes it seems, but they, come like that. Then you're only paying adult admission, and we have other discounts. There are passes you can check out of the library, and they give a discount. We give AAA discounts and all kinds of things like that. So, what might seem like it's too expensive, I would say, investigate, because chances are there's some discount that you could get to come and spend the day with us.
And it's so worth it.
Totally. So we've talked a lot about programming. Can you tell us a little bit about the structures and homes and buildings? What are some of your favorites?
So we have, as you said, we have 68 buildings, all of which were moved from about 90 miles away is the farthest one. And they are all different kinds of buildings. So everything from, the little tailor shop that moved, a little one-room schoolhouse, a one-room log cabin, because what makes us different from a place like, say, Sturbridge or even Williamsburg is we span the whole 19th century. So roughly like 1805 to 1880, 85, whereas most of the other living history museums are like just one more narrow time period. Farmers Museum is like that. I don't remember exactly what time period it is, but it's sort of all one time. Whereas with us, you can go from the one room log cabin up through our Hamilton house, which is post Civil War, like huge house that the Victorian house kind of way out in the back corner of the museum. So you get that whole spectrum of here's what the 19th century was like. It's kind of like children. I don't really have a favorite, but the one that kind of speaks to me is the Livingston Backus house, which is on our village square. And it's a white house, and it's got columns on the front. And it's the only house that came from the city of Rochester, interestingly. Like all the other ones came from kind of the more rural areas, but it was taken down in actually the 50s because of it was there by the inner loop and the ice rink in Cornhill. And so when they were putting in the inner loop and the ice rink, they took this house down. They knew it was beautiful. I think it was actually the Rochester Historical Society that did that. And so it lived in a warehouse for like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Taken apart piece by piece until they asked, like, the Farmers Museum, they asked lots of places, are you interested in this? And no one was able to take something of this size, but the museum was able to. And so it came, they unpacked it all, literally like built it back piece by piece. And it's beautiful. And it, unfortunately, we have had 2 fires in the whatever 40 plus years we've been there. Actually, the brewery caught on fire, and then that building caught on fire after one of the Yuletides in December of 1996.
Oh, no.
So had to be completely restored, rebuilt, kind of reinterpreted. And so, you know, when you look at that building and you think, okay, it lived in a warehouse for 10 years, and then it came here and got put back together and then had a fire. And it's just,
it's stunning.
You know, yeah, you would think, like, when you look around now, we have to a lot remind people, like, no, these buildings weren't here. Like, they all got moved here. They all, you know, have that kind of story of a really big adventure that they went on to be where they are. And most of them were in horrible shape when they got moved. And so to be put back together like that and to be as, you know, as lovely as they are, though that's a whole separate, you know, keeping 68 old buildings with shingles and paint and windows. And yeah, that takes a lot too.
Is that a whole nother set of employees that have to specialize in something?
It is. Yeah. We have a staff, and I use that word slightly loosely because right now we only have 1, but we're about to hire a second preservation carpenter, and we could hire probably 5 and still not make a huge dent in the windows that need to be reglazed and the roofs that need to be put on and things like that. So it's a lot, but it's hard. It's kind of like the blacksmith and the tinsmith that we were talking about, like finding people who know how to do that work, who know how to reglaze a window, who know how to put on cedar shingles. It's not easy, and there aren't as many people around who know how to do that anymore. So it's hard.
Such specialized fields that some are not necessarily used anymore. I know I have a friend who was a shearer. So he had done some acting over there, and did some shearing, and he now has this company where he gets sent around the world to do shearing of different animals. So it's very neat. Such a very specialized jobs that are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who needs to do that anymore? Well, they're right there.
Somebody does, right. Yeah.
We tried to get our windows reglazed. We bought a 100-year-old house and tried to preserve it. And I mean, if you do the windows correctly, they're going to be better and more energy efficient than anything you're going to buy. And just finding somebody, like you said, that knows how to reglaze a window.
Mm-hmm.
And then the guy we hired was like letting his kid do it. And the windows he did were not done nearly as well. I was like, kind of don't want to pay for those ones because the ones you did were fine. And then fast forward and we replaced all the windows, and it was so sad. It was like so depressing. Tried to learn how to do it myself.
Yeah. Well, that's what, when again, looking at kids coming out of high school and trying to help them to understand, like, you can make a lot of money doing something like window glazing or roofing or anything like that. Like, we pay lots and lots of money to people to do this work. So if you like working with your hands and, taking care of old buildings, there's something to be said for exploring that as a career path.
Absolutely.
Or dyeing your own fabric.
Yeah.
I keep going back to like the back corner of the museum where they're back there dyeing the fabric to make so many parts of the museum. And it's funny because the longer we're sitting here, the more I'm remembering that there is to do.
Yeah, I think we need to take a day or a weekend to just go and immerse ourselves in it.
That's what you guys need. Can you get like an old hotel?
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, well, We do have a new program now where we had done it in our Pioneer area where you could come and spend the weekend in our log cabin.
Oh,
but
wow.
But now we still do that, but now we have one where you can come with a larger group, so up to like 7 or 8 people, and spend the night in Hosmer's Inn, which is, the yellowish one on the village
That's my
square.
favorite. Yeah. I love that building.
Upstairs, we have bedrooms, we have beds. Some people bring air mattresses. It's definitely not luxurious in any stretch of the imagination, but it's fun.
Right.
Fun to do.
That sounds amazing.
And I mean, just as a commercial add-on for those that are listening, you can also get married there and host events there. So many things. So,
Yep.
I can't wait. What's your favorite thing coming up at the museum? Like, what are you most excited for?
I think I would say camp is fun. Well, probably my 2 favorite events that we do, like our special events, are we do a History on Tap program, which is a Friday night, breweries, wineries who come and give out samples. And if it's a beautiful night, there's music, and it really being out there at night is so much different. So that's fun. I love the agricultural fair. That's in October, and there are lots of vendors who come and sell everything from, alpaca made goods to bread and soap. But then, seeing kids come out and come to camp, like we costume about half the campers who come. The ones who do historic village camps, we put them in costumes. So dresses and bonnets, or pants and suspenders and little hats. And so every Monday morning we got a new batch of 75 to 85 kids who need costumes, and it's just really cute because they're so excited. And again, that's like the kind of the entry point for a lot of people to come, for kids to come and kind of explore their 19th century side and learn a little bit more about it. So, but there is, as we've said a couple times, there's something for everybody. So I am at most of the events that we have. I think, they're all well-researched, fun, something for everybody. So
I really want to get to a baseball game.
It's fun. It is so much fun. We went when the agricultural
every year,
fair was there, and it was amazing.
Oh yeah. So that was the tournament kind of thing, like the end of the year. Yeah,
it was wonderful. I have not yet been to the Halloween themed one, so that's my goal this year. So
we talk about it every year, because every year I think you have like the ad, and the kids are like, "We need to come back," and we're like, "Okay, we're gonna come back," and then October just flies by.
All right, I'm gonna get that on our calendar, and it's just something we're going to do.
Yep, it sells out, so be sure to buy your tickets early. Those will go on sale probably like mid-September.
All right. Shoot us an email when it's so a reminder.
I will remember that.
So likely there's no more structures coming in. What's the future for the museum? And we like in the next 10, 15 years, is it just continuing to come up with great new programming and tackling some of those actual pieces of history that people don't want to talk about necessarily? What's next for you guys?
Yeah, I think that's really what it is so kind of the change that we've made, and this even predates me, was, we used to just talk about the building, and this building was moved from this place, and this is what it was. But there are so many rich stories that we can tell about the people who were affiliated with the buildings. And like one of them, we didn't talk about this, but we have the first house that Nathaniel Rochester lived in when he came up from Maryland. He came to Dansville in the early 1800s, and he actually enslaved people in that house. He brought them from Maryland to Dansville, and he had people that he owned. And so that's not a story that we've told before as it relates to that building. It's sometimes people, more than you would maybe think, don't even realize there was enslavement in New York State. They think, oh, well, we were in the North. Like, no, there were no enslaved people here. But yeah, yes, actually there were. Again, you might not have learned about it. So just for us to continue to just do that research, because there's so much that we could find, and then figure out how we can tell it in different ways. So, We're going to do probably around African American history. We're going to do some tours that connect various parts of different houses that have that history and kind of put them together that way. We're doing a lot more at night. You talked about the spirits program and some other things. So trying to give people more outside of our 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. time frame and just more experiential. So the chance to come work with our blacksmith or work with our potter and learn how to do that. We have a whole series of classes and workshops that we offer, and they're usually sold out. Everything from cheese making, again, popular, but we started a new one this year that's coffee and donuts. So you make 19th century donuts.
Things.
Yeah, I know. What's not to love?
Perfect.
I'm in.
So, just trying to, again, the word we've used, like make ourselves more relevant, make ourselves, because the 19th century was a long time ago. Even for, our kids to say like, wait, what is that, time period? But there's a lot of it that connects. And so how can we connect those things so that we can learn from the past? Because that's important. There were things that we should try not to repeat, but if you don't understand them, then that's going to be, harder to do.
Right. I love it. You guys are doing great work. And like I said, I was so thrilled to see how far things had come. And I was ashamed of myself for not having visited in the last couple of years. And I'm very excited. I just called him this morning. I was like, Lucas, do you remember when we went? He's like, yeah, we got to do so many things. So we'll definitely be visiting more. And if everybody should get down there, it's so incredible. Preserving history is so important. And I'm so glad to hear that you and other living history museums are doing well and thriving and doing things to stay relevant, because it's got to be hard. But I love it.
It is. But, having the reaction that you two had is what makes it worthwhile. And that I say that, as I'm out and about in the community, it's very rare that someone says, we came to the museum and it really sucked. They have these memories. Maybe it was their 4th grade field trip. Maybe they brought their kids, whatever, but they have these experiences and they want to pass them on. And so that's what, makes all the adventure of making payroll and keeping up 68 old buildings worth it. Because it's, it's good that we are having an impact on people and they're enjoying their time that they spend with us.
Well, we're grateful that you do it.
I do want to mention to the listeners, I don't know if anybody's out there like me right now, but one of the things I'm personally struggling with is that we had this moment during the pandemic where we had control of our time and we had control of our, spending time with our loved ones and being outside and doing these things. And it felt so good. And we're like, we're never going to go back to the way it was. Well, we went back to the way it was.
Yeah.
And now we're in it and we're back to the way it was. And one of the things I'm looking forward to most about taking my kids there is that we're going to be in that. And we're going to be in simplicity, even though we know that what you do to make all that simplicity happen is very complex, which is kind of an opposite thing. But I'm going to go because I want to be in the simplicity of it and I'm in the simpleness and just having that connection with life and with my family and with my friends. And so for the people out there that feel like me, that are like grasping for those moments, the museum is a great space to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to be able to spend time together, and even the drive out is peaceful and,
it's wonderful.
You can kind of reconnect a little bit that way. And, there are lots of fun things on the way, cute towns and places you can stop. So yeah, it's an adventure that is hopefully will connect everybody in your family or friend circle together a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So how can people find you, find out more information?
Well, come visit our website. It's GCV, like GeneseeCountryVillage.org. All of our events are up there. We go out probably 2 or 3 months on there, so there'll be more that will be coming. And we sell tickets there, so generally that's where you want to go to find out when tickets are available and see if you need to buy them in advance. But we also have a really active social media presence, both on Facebook and Instagram, so you can follow us there and get the latest on what's happening as well. And yeah, we're open 10 to 4, Wednesday to Sunday, through mid-October. Then we'll be open weekends through the rest of the year with a lot of special events throughout the rest of the year. So lots of opportunities to come based on your schedule.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. This was lots of fun to talk about all of this.
All right. I'm buying tickets. I'm going online right now. I'm getting tickets.
Yeah, all of the events. Events. It's definitely, it's one of those places that the moment I walk in, I'm like, I'm coming here 4 more times this year. Like, you just want to be there.
Right. I always think like it's so far away, and it's really not. I mean, it's not far at all. And there are so many cool places to pop into on the way, which is, it's worth it. And I've wanted to go to that Spirits one for years. So it's definitely on my radar to go to that. But there's so many other things I want to do.
Every year, Halloween. I didn't even know there was a Christmas one.
I didn't either until Lucas told me and we got tickets. But that baseball game, I went and I was like, this is going to be silly. I had a blast. And the one in October is a whole tournament, and it is during the time of that agricultural fair, which is pretty cool to see. Just a big tent set up by the gazebo. There tons of stuff everywhere.
I am in for all of it. And if you've never been to the Genesee Country Village and Museum, you are missing out. If you can't afford it, there are discounts to look for. Let us know. We'll bring you as our guest.
Absolutely.
Everybody should see it. I'm not kidding. The reason I like it so much is because you do kind of put your phone down.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't really a reason to be on tech. Watching my kids roll down a hill for a half an hour. Like, we don't get those moments that we said we weren't going to get rid of a couple years ago.
Right.
They're gone. You know, their life is busy again. I can't wait to schedule our visit.
Several visits.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. I know. I was like, how do I get there as like a business owner too? Like, how do I incorporate? Like, I just want to be a part of it. When she's talking, I'm like, I want to volunteer. I want to work. I'm like, I don't have any time for this. So if I can find a way to get my business there, at least I can get involved somehow.
Well, I love how much they're using partnerships to help them grow. I didn't know that Rohrbox was partnering with them on the beer.
No.
How did I not know that? Hey, John, thanks.
Yeah, right.
How did we not know that? But yeah, and just and using the resources that are out there. You know, you're not reinventing the wheel. If you're trying, you know, I love that they're trying to increase, you know, the diversity in the stories they're telling about Rochester. So going to the Science Museum because they have that information,
right,
and using that. So find your partners. Find the information that's already out there. And honestly, there's got to be a connection for you, Kelly, with your storytelling ability.
I'm working on it.
I think a winter partnership, some fireside chats.
I mean, I do know pretty much the entire history of the town of Irondequoit at this point. So I've like read and can recite parts of the bicentennial. So I am that nerd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't even know that there was one, and I live here.
Anyways. I have 2 copies. I'll send you one. I printed it out. It's like 300 pages.
So things I will probably not store inside my head.
Yeah.
That's probably on the list.
Yeah.
No offense.
No worries.
Anyone, but that's just not going to be, I can read it anytime. But yeah, so I think that this was a fascinating interview, and I think people need to learn from Becky and the museum and continue to grow.
Absolutely. Visit it. If you need a space for an event, they do team building events there. Like you said, you could get married there. So there's a lot of opportunities. And like you said, if it's not in the cards for you financially, let us know and we will bring you as our guest.
We'll just do a bossy bus.
Love it. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thanks everybody for joining us and listening to the story of the Wehle family and the magic that is our very own living history museum, the Genesee Country Village and Museum.
Be bold.
Be brave.
Be the boss.